Practical mindfulness that meets you where you are. This is Mindfulness Unscripted. I'm John Orsini. It's that feeling of what is behind me that I can even lovingly say, okay, I don't need to drag this behind me anymore. I don't need to be dragging these boats. I can just burn them and it's all straight ahead, right? It's all like, what am I moving towards? And that can be really tricky because, of course, our nervous system tries to keep us safe. So it tries to keep us in our familiar. The way that I started to finally land with where I'm going to live is not because where I'm living is making so much sense or where I thought I might end up. It's where my people are. I think actually the older I get, the more I realize like home is people, you know?
True. That's really true. I love that. People ask me all the time, like, how are you? And of course, oftentimes you're like, I'm fine, I'm good. But like, you're not really that great. You're like, I'm just kind of, you don't really have time to hear the full answer, right?
Yeah.
But I will often, especially in my wellness spaces with like my yoga people that know me a long time, I'll be like, I'm okay. Like,
Yeah.
I'm hanging in there, but like, I'm not great because I'm not like, I mean, yes, like I'm healthy and there's a lot of really amazing things in my life, but like when things shift so drastically and you have to make these really big decisions, like, I started my business prior to COVID. It was a different world, like entirely. Cost of living was way different. I was in a partnership with, a home that I was living in and like a partner that was making a lot of money, and my bills were just a lot lower. My debt was a lot lower, like all the things. And then you fast forward to 6 years into your own business and cost of living is skyrocketed and you're living on your own and you're like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. Like, I don't want this treadmill to be the treadmill that I'm on forever or for 10 years or whatever the case may be. So you just have to take I've had to take a really hard look at like what's working and what's not working and how I can like set myself up to thrive and to just really have an awesome life. I mean, of course, there's going to be challenges and all that shit, whatever. But like this chunk of hardness that I've been in, I'm like, I'm done with you. Like,
Yeah.
let's make some really big changes because this is not working. And that all being said, Miami's unaffordable for most normal humans. You have to be like making well over 6 figures as a single person to have any like decent lifestyle in Miami.
Sure.
Great.
Sure. Yeah, you gotta be a New Yorker that invests in real estate to live in Miami now.
Totally.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm just getting it's happening to all the cities, but the main thing I want to say and reflect, and thank you for sharing this, because I think a big reflection, and anybody who would even be listening to this might really be resonating, because I'm finding a lot of people that left New York City, for instance, for various reasons and have gone all over the place. But even in Connecticut, I'm finding a lot of people like myself who never thought they wouldn't live in New York City, but just based on a lot of things going on, not the least of which New York City's always been expensive,
Sure.
things like that. But everything has gotten, and especially in these beloved cities, has just gotten so outrageous. And then, like you're saying, to do it alone, like, so the main thing I wanted to say in reflection of that is just, the older I get too, the more I realize family, community, we're not meant to do this alone.
We're not.
And
I'm so isolating. It's so hard.
Yep. And maybe that, I know it resonates with both of us. I know you're a very strong, independent person. And I know, like with myself, I'll just use an I statement. I have always leaned towards being a loner, even not just like, oh, I can do this on my own, but like being a full on loner. And I realized, like, the times I've even lived alone, when I could get by doing that, it was not good for me. Like, I thought it's what I even wanted, but it was not good for me. And so it's this balance, like people be like, oh, I know all my neighbors. That could be a blessing. It could also be like, but this neighbor is freaking obnoxious, right? Like
Totally.
we need our space, and all of us to varying degrees, but so much to be said. I think a lot of people especially after like the 2020 time, a lot of people left maybe what they thought their life was going to be, and then maybe felt like a little bit unmoored. But I think a lot of people have been gravitating back towards family and community, because we like doing this. I don't know. It's like, in one way, those crazy years of 2020, 2021, like that crazy time has sort of passed and the world is quote unquote back to normal-ish. But of course, it's crazy in its own way right now, for sure. And it's just sort of like, I think a lot of people, and it means a lot to me that we're talking about this, because I haven't really talked about this that much on here. And it's like, I think it's important that we had, like you're saying with your community, saying, maybe I'm not doing that. Like I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, I'm great. Oh, I'm great. I think a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons, feel unmoored. And it's like life is quote unquote back to normal, but it's not. It's a
It is
very
not.
different thing for a lot of reasons, right? And
Mhm.
individually, of course, as well as collectively. And it's like, I just think trying to come back to our people, whoever those people are, family, community, you know?
I totally agree with you. And yeah, I was just saying this to my mom the other day because we were talking about partnership, and like she was like, I just want you to find a really good man. And I was like, well, me too, mom. But like beyond that, like if and when that happens, and it's that whole thing is like, that's a different, like a whole other story we don't even have to get into because that's on top of mind right now. But I was saying to her, like, I think every human, male and female, wants to be in some form of a partnership because we're community-based creatures. Like back in the day, we lived together in these tribes, whatever that looked like. And we helped raise our neighbors' children and vice versa. And like we aged and our elders aged and they lived and they died with us. And like it was just this whole big, so and so went hunting. We all ate that food. Like now we're so isolated where, to your point, like I do really like living alone. Like I can very much be a loner. And it's really isolating. Like the day to day of it, the day to day of just like, oh, it's just me. And like, I can't even pop over to my mom's for dinner. She's like 18 hours away, like,
Mm.
um, that, that I think, I don't know. I think that's something that we all would probably benefit if we shifted a bit from that. Like if there,
Yeah.
which is what we've been talking about this like, in the wellness world for a while, but it's become more and more apparent that the number one indicator of longevity and health is your social life in your community. It's above what you're eating, it's above what you're drinking, it's above your workouts. All of it is, do you have connection and community?
Mhm.
Point blank, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's wild. And then we don't often prioritize it. I think people like you and me, but we live and kind of breathe that space.
Yep. I'm wondering if the
So
way that whether it's financially speaking, the way that inflation and all these different things are going, it's I maybe we were in this really prosperous time, and it's interesting because prosperity, like, what was there's a few different books. When I used to read tons about nutrition, just like constantly, I went through like a phase of several years where I just read, talk about longevity, reading about blue zones, different
yeah,
things, and being like, oh, it's the food. And then it's like, well,
yep.
yeah, the food
I
can be
mean,
from
yes,
locally.
yeah.
Yeah, like the food's local. It doesn't have the chemicals, like the industrial farming chemicals. All that's crucially important. We're
Totally.
utilizing that those blue zones where people live past 100 years, the most common thing is strong social bonds, just like
Yep.
we're saying. And so I'm wondering if, like, through times of prosperity, in the same way with food, prosperity sometimes means we have an overabundance of food. And so we're even overfeeding ourselves, right? Sometimes when there's overabundance, it's interesting because it's obviously it's a very special thing. It's really beautiful, and a lot of gratitude for abundance in every level. But sometimes abundance can allow us to isolate more than we might or should.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering if, like, again, a balance here is important. But if something to be said for when maybe it's just too expensive for most people to be just living completely alone. So maybe we have to come back to, like, all right, how do I, or like childcare can be so
It's crazy.
expensive.
It's insane. I don't know how
Yeah.
I say this all the time as a single woman, the two cats, right?
Mhm.
I gotta include them.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how people do it.
Yeah.
Like, I sincerely I mean, I go to the grocery store and yes, I mean, I admittedly eat, I eat healthy, so I'm not buying a bunch of crap, and then I also eat, like I mean, I eat 99.9% of my food, like, at home.
Mhm.
Every now and then, I might go with a friend and get, ah, it's something super like, it's just not what I do. I can't afford to, it's just not my lifestyle, but I go to the grocery store, I could drop $100, and I need to go back in, like, 3 days.
Yeah, for sure.
I
Yep.
mean, that's like let's say I'm spending $500 a month on groceries for one woman. I'm a woman, so I'm not even eating as much as a man. So I'm like, how are families doing this? Childcare is so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wonder, right? Like, because all to your point, and I know, again, I don't have kids at this point. I have nephews, and like, so I'm getting exposure of what it's like to be a kid now, or like a
Mhm.
parent now with kids. And the idea that, of course, when parents are overtaxed, overstressed, kids can have iPads, and it just takes the edge off, right? But again, it increases the isolation. It increases, I know the kids sometimes play like video games together over
Oh,
the
yeah.
iPads or whatever, but I understand why we have the problem we have on a lot of layers. I'm no expert on it, but when you see it firsthand. But this is all to say that when you're in community, the older kids kind of can potentially look after the younger kids in an ideal situation, right? They're not getting them into too much trouble. Like, so there's like almost like built-in childcare.
Well, and
With
the
the
elders, like the
Yeah.
grandparents, are
Yep.
so like the community, like before our modern day human world, grandparents played such a massive role in raising kids
Oh, for sure.
because they had to, you
Yeah.
know.
And it's just built in. There
Yeah,
and so yeah, right, so it takes off the edge of the cost of childcare. Also, more people living together, which, of course, I'm not gonna idealize it. Sometimes living with people can be annoying depending
it's
on the people
super
around.
annoying.
Well, yeah, no, totally. So, but like that's so to come full circle, I'll just say maybe something about inflation, all the different stuff that's going on. Maybe just by a byproduct of that is that we're just gonna have to get closer as people again and figure that out. And hopefully, that helps bridge some of the epidemic of loneliness that doesn't get talked about too much, and bring us back into these spaces where in some ways the prosperity maybe allows us to drift apart.
I think that's a really positive way to look at it, and also and could also be very true and real. I mean, the predictions are that moving forward, generations are going to have to start living with each other again the way we used to. They don't have an option.
Mm.
And you've probably seen this in New York, I'm sure, because it's all over South Florida now. Is like they're building condo buildings, but it's not like single living apartments, if that's the right word to say. It's like it's I forget the name of it, but essentially, say there's a three-bedroom apartment, you're applying to live in that apartment with strangers. Like, you pay X amount of money for your one bedroom, and then there's two other people living in other bedrooms that you didn't necessarily choose. It's like
Wow.
I forget the name of it. I forget what they're
Yeah.
calling these buildings, but I was looking at them last year and I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's interesting. Again, it's a way to like push people together, but it's not necessarily
I
community.
could see in your 20s,
Hmm.
especially like you said, the way the world's moving now, like I could see that be more commonplace and more acceptable.
Hmm.
Um, for sure. So, I mean, the cost of rent, what it is now in my 20s, I could have never afforded that. So,
Right. Yeah.
but when you get a little bit older and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be around these weirdos. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to kind of like different phases in your life. But there's a lot of that happening around here. Like, there's a
Sure.
ton of that. And their whole thing is like be in community, like affordable
Mm.
prices, like all the things.
Mm.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. I remember there's this documentary and it's just called Happy.
Mhm.
A documentary called Happy. And I remember I went to one of the screenings of it in New York City when it was first coming out, and it was a really beautiful experience. And it was really leaning on the documentary just basically covered, all right, if we go all around the world to all these different communities, what's the number one thing that makes people happy that goes across cultures, across anything that you would consider a difference? Like, what is the baseline human thing that makes people happy? And not surprisingly, community. Like, spoiler alert, it's still absolutely worth watching that documentary. It's so fantastic. But I remember, again, this is going back some years that I watched it, but it was some community, maybe in like Norway or Denmark or something like that, and it was a place where people lived more communally, and it wasn't a commune, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
where people, and so for instance too, like talking about the cost of things or whatever, is that people would rotate essentially doing potluck dinners, So again, like childcare, like we were talking about, built in. Even food was essentially built in. Like people just cooked in big amounts and then just did potlucks. And so not only did that make food overall less expensive for people, it also took the burden off everybody to have to cook a dinner every night for their kids, for themselves. It's just too, we're not meant to do this alone. And it's just, we've been so fractured and isolated. So, I sometimes I sound overly idealistic, but I do think, there are certain things that I think even as stuff gets more and more expensive, again, hopefully it's opening towards more optimism, like optimism around coming together.
Oh, I totally agree. Listen, we have to be idealistic, and
Yeah.
sometimes we have to be like I don't like to use this word. I'm not using this word, and I'm not using this word specifically towards you, but towards
Mm,
myself and like everybody. Like sometimes a little bit of delusion is helpful,
mm,
like in the sense of like be delusional about how successful you can be, because if you're not thinking all the way up here and you're only down here, like you're never going to get up here. So like a little bit of delusion's healthy.
mhm. No, I
You
say
know?
yeah, and it's interesting. It's a good word. I think that's a good word, and it's an interesting word because part of the delusion, like saying delusion makes it really grabs your attention.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
whoa.
yeah.
But to me, and again, so much of the work that I do in breath work, and then we'll get into the work that you're doing with sound, with everything that you do. Um, but so much of breath work, the way that I see it is we exist within certain parameters around either stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of, um, and also, as part of that, what our nervous system will allow, right?
Mhm.
So even past our everyday consciousness, our nervous system will only allow us to expand so much, right?
True.
Our nervous system will only allow so much love into our life before we start to self-sabotage, depending on what our baseline is. So I think the word delusion in the context that you're using it here, it really grabs your attention. And I think it's actually something very palpable that is so much more than delusion, right? Like that, it's helpful to think of it that way and to just be like, I don't know, why not, right?
Sure,
But
yeah.
what it does is it opens the door to wider possibility, which is actually perfectly, perfectly possible within the scope. It's just that it's outside um, the typical storylines or commentary we have around what we think we're capable of.
Mhm.
And it's nice to do different mindfulness practices or even just different thought practices, journaling, whatever it is, to be like, what happens if I expanded outside what I consider myself to be capable of? Or
Mhm.
like what happens if I expand beyond what I think is safe or think is known into this even more beautiful expansive territory? And that, yeah, if that's a touch of delusion, I think that's important delusion to land in.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Yes. More
Cool.
delusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so with the work you're doing, something I find so awesome is that I see you doing sessions for sound bath with microdose.
Mhm.
So that's something, again, not necessarily for everybody, not necessarily like, and obviously it's not like it's mandatory, right?
No.
But I like to speak that in and mention that because so many places are not only decriminalizing, but legalizing. And
Yes.
especially when things like that are regulated, there's so much therapeutic value. And especially when you're talking microdose,
Mhm.
not getting into like, oh crap, are we going to blow this out of the water and people are going to have psychotic episodes,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It's because research is important around all that, obviously.
Totally.
But the idea that you're pairing this in because that's been like becoming much more popular, accepted, and utilized in
Yeah.
South Florida, right? So can you tell me about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of my big offerings, I was actually going to have one of my sessions last night, and I postponed it because the weather was it was supposed to be at the beach, and the weather was just so unpredictable. And then it ended up being like this gorgeous pink sunset without rain, but I don't control the weather. So that being said, yeah. So I do every month I use something called micros and sound, and I just pair the healing effects of microdosing psilocybin with sound healing. So two really powerful modalities that are coming together. And to your point, microdosing is always optional, right? No one has to come and do that. They can just come for the sound. But they are really powerful pairings. And I mean, microdosing in and of itself should really be a more of a regimen to get like the full powerful effects. So I always kind of give like an opening talk talking about what microdosing is, why it's so powerful, and if people are interested in like really experiencing the effects, try to do like at least a month of a regimen of microdosing. Because what happens is it starts to like rewire your brain, creating new neural pathways, like all that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
And if you're taking a microdose, you're most likely going to feel it and you're going to feel really good. So,
mhm,
um, yes, it's a bit of a gray area in certain
mhm,
states. So I tread lightly with my marketing, but
mhm.
never been a problem. And my product is like so I'm also not qualified to lead a session where you're going to go into like a full-blown
Yeah.
journey.
Yep.
I'm not qualified. I don't want to do that with you. You want to do that, like I can send you off to the right people. So this is a really gentle, safe way to just explore some plant medicine and then also like enjoy some sound healing, which is amazing in itself, right?
Yes.
The product I use is from Jamaica. It's friends of mine. I think you know this, or maybe you don't remember this, but I lived in Jamaica for like a small amount of time, and so I still have connections there, and I go back there every year. And one of my friends owns a mushroom business, and they grow the
Mhm.
mushrooms and they sell the mushrooms, and they also partner with like they've partnered with Johns Hopkins University to do some studies, and they have a lot of funding here in the US, so they're like highly reputable. So the product that I get is very, very, very much safe, and it's
Mhm.
quality and it's organic. So like I stand behind my product so much. It's I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't know where I was getting this from because I'm really like picky about those things.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's just like a little snippet into that world.
Beautiful. It's awesome that you're doing that because, again, everybody's got to find out for themselves what this or that is. But I also appreciate you saying because there are plant medicine facilitators that are trained to guide very in-depth journeys, and that's its whole thing unto itself.
Totally.
The microdosing aspect, like you're saying, when you know where it's coming from. Also, like Johns Hopkins is doing incredible work around these studies, and I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of that because I had a conversation on here. Um, I can't remember which number it was, but my friend Brandon, who's a veteran, and so I have worked with him with breath work and a group that he's a part of called Mission Flexible, and so, but Brandon is an advocate for ibogaine. So that is an example of a very in-depth plant medicine experience to heal some deep-rooted trauma. And also, there's a lot of efficacy. A lot of studies have been done around the efficacy for ibogaine to help with addiction,
Hmm.
and all things like this. But the point being, the more studies and the more research that are done, the more that these medicines can be used appropriately for the right populations and the right individuals and the right situations and held expertly, and so it's great when it's important to track the lineage of the thing itself, like where it's coming from, where it's being grown, and then of course the facilitation. And anyways, all to say around the microdosing that it doesn't have to be some mind-blowing, potentially terrifying experience. Like in the sense that sometimes I feel like microdosing can be anything from it's micro, so you don't really feel it.
There's that. There's
Right.
that. Yeah.
Physically, you're just like, "Did I take something?" But maybe
Sure.
just things feel like just a little lighter,
Mm-hmm.
Like
Hmm.
sometimes I describe it as like, just very gentle champagne bubbles.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Right? It's almost like, like that in a way. But around what you're saying too, around the rewiring of the brain, I'm just so excited because people, again, Johns Hopkins and others have already been doing studies around the power of this, how in one guided session can help with depression
Hmm.
significantly. And of
Hmm.
course, I think it goes without saying that part of the holdup is funding from pharmaceutical companies that want to keep people on the same pill day in, day out,
Oh,
day in, day out. They have like someone tied into their ecosystem for the rest of their life.
they need the
Keep them
profits.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They need even more, I'm sure. They don't have enough. It's
No,
never.
they don't have enough. They never have enough.
Yeah, so again, just like, and I'm sure, that you say, but like not the idea that this is meant to, you know, we're not doctors, we're not pretending to be, we're not trying to be, but thank goodness that doctors are involved in this research because I have seen it firsthand how much even just the microdosing helps, just soften the edges around chronic anxiety, right? Soften the edges around feelings of doom and gloom, just soften the edges around stuff that people carry, and it just gives for such a light touch of something, the impacts are profound, like you're saying, with a certain regimen, especially. Just even yeah.
Yeah, no, and you're everything you said, I love that, like softening the edges. And listen, we live in like, I mean, we can acknowledge it that we're living through a really, I think human beings and the history of humans, it's always been kind of like rough. Like, think about our grandparents, like the Great Depression, World War II, Vietnam War. Like, I mean, they lived through some really, really hard stuff, right? So it's just, I think, I do think and part of what I say to my clients is I'm very like much a realist and also like optimist all at the same time. But like this is hard stuff we're doing. Like this is hard. Being here as a human is hard. Like yes, there's beautiful moments and joyous moments and all those things. And a lot of this is hard. And a part of the human condition is like this tool that we have, this mind, like how do we use it effectively? And it can be really hard with this phone in our hands and all this access to technology and this information 24/7. It's like your mind could just spin like not, and people do. People are like spinning. We're just receiving all this information all the time. It's an addiction for a lot of people. So to soften the edges
Yeah.
through a really healthy journey with any like plant medicine that we know has been researched and is safe and is effective. And like you said, unfortunately, there's some roadblocks with people in power and what their interests are. But then there's a lot of people that are doing the good work, and they're they're doing the studies, they're doing the clinical trials, they're doing the research. And it matters. Like it really, really, really matters. And so, yes, my thing with the micros and sound is like, I actually, now that we're having this conversation, I should do a month or two on a microdosing regimen because I go in and out of like doing it for a while, like, and then kind of like backing off. Um, but I just really want to open people's mind and offer them a safe space, offer them a really great, safe product that they can Google and feel really good about, you know? And if they wanted to go deeper and make it a regimen and all that kind of stuff, I can give them recommendations of, they can go see a practitioner somewhere where it's more, legal.
Mhm.
Um, and also too, and this is just an interesting side note, the same company that I'm referring to in Jamaica, they do retreats specifically for veterans, like full psilocybin retreats. So they're going to be with facilitators. They're going to take them through a massive journey specifically for veterans in the US. So they bring them down to Jamaica and they have like a whole program specifically for veterans. And so that's been really important work for them as well.
Mm,
Yeah.
thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've been taught for I don't even know how long. It's outside my scope of understanding to know how long it feels like veterans have been overlooked and underserved.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's always it's interesting. Even back when I was acting as my only career for that chunk of time for most of my adulthood, I ended up playing Marines with PTSD several times to the point where like my agents thought I was from a military family at one point. I was like, no, I don't
There's a
know.
passion for you. Yeah.
It was just one of those things, it
Yeah.
just clicked, and then the more I researched myself for these parts, the more I got to know veterans in preparation for these parts, the deeper and deeper and deeper, and the more love, the more respect, and the more you realize how astonishingly overlooked this community is of veterans, and, so I'm so grateful to hear, so that's amazing, so I could, share
Yeah.
this organization certainly with my veteran friends. Is that something you would share the name? Do you wanna
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's
yeah.
called Patoo, Patoo, or hold on. I always get it wrong if there's two T's or two O's, but it's Patoo. And if you look it up, um, it'll pop up if you type in like Patoo Jamaica,
Mm,
it'll pop right up. Yeah,
great,
Patoo.
great.
Yeah, they do a lot of work. And the name of their retreats is One Retreats, and I believe that through One Retreats is like where they have their veteran program.
Great.
So yeah, great
Cool.
product. Um, and it's interesting because there's all sorts of types of people, and some people within the wellness community and within my yoga community, like they don't really believe in like pairing the micros with like what I do. So I've had like like an interesting amount. Like some studios won't host my workshop because they don't want the legalities like behind it.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of looking for like a new studio home because I was at Casa for a long time with you and I had worked together at that one time, and she
Mhm.
was my friend, and we had like that event was always sold out when we had it at her studio. It was packed. Well, she
Mhm.
sold the studio. And so now I'm looking for like a new home for this workshop. I love doing it on the beach. The beach is obviously magical and lovely, but I can't predict the weather and I can't predict my surroundings. Is there a party that's happening? Is there a dog? Is there a kid?
Yep.
And that just so that becomes frustrating. So I've had it's an area that is like it's an interesting space because it's obviously so needed and so powerful, and it's a little like sticky, you know?
Yep. Yep. Well, certainly, we could continue to talk more about that, and then certainly plugging into the DC area, for
Yeah.
instance, and certainly up by me, different places, because it is really important work, and as long and you're transparent, you're clear, all that stuff's important about it being responsibly held. And again, micro, you know what I mean? So there's not like you don't have the contraindications that you would
No.
a full on.
No, 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 no.
So you're dealing with a whole different thing, but I understand why studios, bigger
I get
studios
it.
would just be like, you know what? It's not, we're, navigating. We could just have the sound bath or whatever it is. And then also some modalities are important to blend. Like for instance, breath work. I don't ever, 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 ever mix breath work with anything. Uh,
Totally.
but sound is different, right? Or like, and and that's not even me. I'm not going to comment on anybody else's breathwork approach, whatever, because depending on
Sure.
whatever, I can only speak for myself, but I don't mix anything with breathwork ever, within the session itself. And, but there are other, modalities. Like that's why, again, I was so excited to talk to you about it on here because I think breath and sound is just such a beautiful,
It
or
is.
I mean, the sound and micro is such a beautiful idea and combination. And then the one other thing was, this was something I learned from Micah from our, we both had Micah as our guide at Acropal there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in pertaining to you're saying around the being on the beach for sound and things. So there is a yes to all of this, right? Like, but something that Micah told me, and this came from one of the more ancient texts, but like certain practices where the emphasis is very much inward,
Mm.
right? And of course, with any mindfulness practice, there is an emphasis on feeling inward, your inward experience.
Yeah.
But depending on the practice, some practices are very much inward emphasis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where the practice, whatever it may be, lands on that scale, it might actually be much more beneficial. As beautiful it is as to be outside, and we both know with Micah, his whole thing is about mindfulness outside. But he and I specifically were talking about breath work, and certainly the more intensive you get with breath work, the more internal the experience. And so it's almost like I think with breath, like my ideal and something I would love to future vision for myself is creating a space that's almost like a womb-like experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Because like breath, for instance, is so in that container, so you could go so inward. So sound has more wiggle room with that, right? Because also I know I have a friend here in Connecticut and she does sound healing where people float in the pool.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So people love that stuff, and also like having the sound healing supported by the tweeting of birds or the crashing of waves. You know
Totally.
what I mean? So that is so, oh my gosh, like nature adding to the crystal bowls and everything else. But anyway, that's all to say, I also understand, someone's got a freaking Bluetooth speaker down the beach, and you're like, oh, the sound of the beautiful waves and the seagulls, and that's not enough for you. You got to just like blast them obnoxious music.
Yeah, and it's like, listen, it's a public space,
Yeah.
right? So you have to like, I'm not, I don't, not right now, but eventually in my life, I'll have a private beach, right? That's my delusion going in. But,
There you go.
but no, it's hard. Like as a facilitator with these types of things, like you want people to come and have the best experience, the most relaxing experience that they can.
Mhm.
So my preference would be for this specific micros and sound. I would prefer like an in studio or an indoor, almost like you said, like a room-like space.
Mm.
Um, which Casa worked really well for that. And I just haven't found my next home. So in the meantime, I have been offering it on the beach just to keep the momentum going.
It's great.
But it is my preference because then also I don't have to worry. Like yesterday, it was Sunday. I'm trying to like kind of have a little bit of a day off, but I also have to work and like I'm checking the forecast nonstop and I'm like, when do I make the call? Because certain people have to drive an hour to get here and like I have to respect that. And I finally made the call at like 5 to cancel it to give people 2 hours. It was pouring, it was thundering, it was lightning. 6:45 rolls around. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's bright pink candy cotton sunset. I literally went to the beach by myself and like journaled, right? Because it was the new moon and it was the equinox. And like, I wanted to honor that for myself, but I was sitting there like, "This would have been perfect," but it
Yeah.
probably happened for a reason.
Mhm.
Maybe it was all supposed to be this way, but that unknown element just gets really frustrating because you have such little control and you have to just,
Definitely.
like, be you have to make the best call for yourself, but, um, eventually, maybe in DC, I'll find my new home with my new
Yeah.
speakers and sound, it'll be perfect. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it sounds like great timing to find a new home because you're literally exploring a new home. So it
I
sounds like perfect
am.
timing, honestly. I mean, and I was thinking about too when you said that there was something, there's that famous, it made the rounds on the internet like probably a year or two ago. The horse and the farmer story. Do you know that one? Some people call it the story of the Taoist farmer.
Oh, maybe tell me. It's
Seemed
yeah.
Yeah, so the gist is there's this farmer and he has this beautiful horse that the whole village is just like, "Oh, this farmer and his gorgeous horse," right? And then so one day the farmer wakes up and the horse has run away. And so all the villagers are say to him, "Oh my gosh, this is awful. This is terrible. What a disaster." And the farmer just says, "Maybe." Like, I don't know if it's good or bad,
Right,
right?
right.
And all the villagers are like, "What the hell are you talking about? This is objectively terrible, blah, blah, blah," right? And he just goes, "I don't know. Maybe it's bad, maybe it's good. I don't know." And they're just like, "Oh my God, what is wrong with this guy?" Anyways, the next day, the horse returns. And not only that, the horse returns with 7 equally gorgeous, stunning wild horses. And the farmer's just like,
See,
you
look
know,
at that.
abundant in wild horses. And then so all the villagers go, "Oh my God, what a turn of events. How incredible this is. How lucky, how amazing." The farmer goes, "I don't know if this is good or bad."
Yeah, right?
Right? And then so, the next thing is that his son, the farmer's son, is training one of the wild horses, gets thrown off, breaks his arm.
Mm,
And so oh, that's bad. It's like, I don't know. And then the military comes and is like, "Hey, we need to recruit your son for this horrible, unjust war." And then they meet the son, his arm's broken. They're like, "Oh, I
darn it.
guess, yeah, I guess we can't recruit him." And then so, it's this back and forth of like, "Oh, that's terrible. Oh, I guess that turned out to be great. Oh, that, you know what I mean?" And it's this back and forth. And so just the bullet point, again, it's always easier said than done. Like, again,
Totally agree, yeah.
and so there's definitely no need for toxic positivity, no need to pretend things
Sure,
we feel
yeah.
other than we do. But just that I loved that story about the idea that context reveals itself over time, right? Like that the worst breakup turns out to be the best thing, but not until we have context, right? We're like, "Holy shit, if this situation never happened, I would have never ended up over here." And this over here, talk about delusion, right? Over here ended up landing me in this space that just felt like a delusion just 2 years prior.
Yeah.
But it only happened because of this breakup or this move, whatever it is, you know?
No, and listen, I thank you for sharing that story, and you're right, I did read it, and I have heard of it, but I wouldn't have been able to remember those details, so
Mm.
thanks for sharing. But it is so true, and it's so easy when you're going through the hard stuff because we all go through the ups and the downs, peaks and valleys, highs and lows, and it's so easy to get stuck in your own shit, in your own, like, "This is bad, this is terrible, this is objectively terrible, how could it be anything other than terrible?" And at the time, it might feel really terrible, but you have to remind yourself, like, "But I bet on the other," and I tell myself this, and I tell people this all the time, like, "I know on the other side of this is really awesome things,
Mhm.
but this is still hard."
Yeah.
Like, whatever this is, me, you, whoever, right?
Yep.
Um, but I have no doubt, like, the big change, the big shakeups, the things that force you to, like, change so much, it's usually for your best. It just getting through it can be, like, the hard part, you know?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a couple other things, not the least of which, and first and foremost, is again, learning, getting trained in conscious communication, getting trained in, that, for lack of a better way to put it, holding space or whatever it is, right? Basically, just getting trained in how to just listen when someone's talking through something or moving through something and not just try to lay on, again, toxic positivity, spiritual platitudes, all with the best intentions. But all of it, when it gets down to it, sometimes even with the best intentions, it creates this feeling that it's not, or it creates this sense that it's not okay to feel what you're feeling.
Mhm.
Right? Even with the best intentions, it's like, "Oh, let me tell you this story about the horse and the farmer." Or let me say, "Oh, you're going to be fine. This is going to be great." It's all of that might be well intentioned, But when it negates what we're feeling, and I'm thinking this, of course, what we're talking about directly, and then also, I have a family member right now who's moving through some stuff, and it's really hard, and so we talk it out, and I just see my part as just listening and reflecting and not always having to, even though it's like, especially when you really care for someone and love someone, you wanna offer these, like,
Always, yeah.
upbeat things, but the irony is that's like that's almost like, sometimes I talk about this in breath work, like a well-intended someone's really sad, really upset about something, and they start crying. And then maybe you love and really care for them and you say, "Oh, don't cry. It's gonna be
Yeah.
okay. Don't cry." It's like, well, no, feel exactly what you're feeling. Cry, right? Like let the thing be
Mhm.
the thing because that's part of the process on the journey. So it's good to know all these things. Again, the horse and the farmer story, all this stuff is great, but never negating feeling what you're feeling as you're feeling it. It's all part of the
Yeah, it is. It's part of the journey. Like the just part of this experience as a human is it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's not just the good, it's not just the positive, and we got to just kind of feel it all. And it makes the good times just that much better, right? And
Mm.
that much more valuable. And you hopefully just enjoy the good times more because
Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on what the thing is, the other thing I thought of was, I had this mentor, his name's Larry, he's actually, like, this legendary, acting
Mm.
coach that just became, like, a life mentor in general, just a really wonderful human being, Larry Moss, and, he told me this it was a poem or this beautiful quote one time, and I always forgot what the actual verbatim thing was, but the gist of it is, "Our greatest obstacles overcome become our greatest strengths."
Mhm.
You know? And so,
It's true.
again, depending on the thing that we're struggling with, of course, but the idea, I don't know, I'll just use like a cliche. It's like, we fall out of a boat and we didn't know how to swim, so we almost drowned, and it's terrifying experience and this and that. But from that, surviving it and being like, okay, let me shake the dust off. Let me take some swimming lessons. It's like I'm gonna become a strong swimmer. And then maybe even then, I'm gonna teach people how to swim now. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So nobody else struggles that same way, different things like that. So again, it depends on what the thing is. Um, but I always think of that sometimes too. Depending on what the thing is, by overcoming it, then all of a sudden it becomes a superpower.
It's usually what happens if you
Yeah.
have the like desire or like capacity to like get there. I mean, like you said, I think some people perhaps in this lifetime like are so overwhelmed by life circumstances and whatever their journey has been that they can't even see that thing as like their stepping stone to greatness.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can, right? I think it just depends like what happened to you as you've like grown up and what's been,
Yeah.
all those things, they all matter. But thank you for I mean, I wasn't anticipating, like, having this conversation that take the turn that it took, but, I
Mm.
mean, when someone asks how I am and I'm, like, close enough to you, I'm just gonna be like, "I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
You know,
I
I
am okay," right? Like, I'm totally
Yeah.
am okay, yeah.
I'm thinking I'm doing what some of the people who work with me know that I do sometimes. I'm just like rolling out quotes right now. But I appreciate so much you sharing that and your courage to just be like, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. And it's so direct and so deceptively simple because what it really is there's a Marianne Williamson quote, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same.
Mm,
If everybody would just have the courage to answer hey, how you doing? To answer that question honestly, and you know what? Maybe the person saying, "Hey, how you doing?" is just saying it as less like a
of course,
off the
right?
cuff thing. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, but what for to be a person who could just in the context where you feel safe and comfortable and when you want to say, you know, honestly, this is what's going on.
Mhm.
For all of us individually to have that courage, the ripple effect that gives so many other people the courage to be like, wait, I can just be honest about how I feel right now. Like I could just share. And then also creating this culture where we can share when we need to. So we feel less alone. We know we're not alone.
Yes.
And then also, by extension of that, creating a culture where we just listen to each other.
Mhm.
We could talk things out. We could share horse and farmer stories or something like that. But it doesn't have to be like, oh, do this, do that, take this supplement, do ice plunging, right? It's like,
No,
sure, we can know that option. But like
yeah.
sometimes we don't need to do things. We just need to be and just to be witnessed, you know? So anyways, thank you for having the courage to share. I think it just
Oh,
creates
you're welcome.
yeah, the culture of it is beautiful. So
I agree with you too. Like, kind of full circle moment here, talking about like community and isolation and being alone. Like, if you're always telling people you're okay, and like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I am okay. Like, I'm a happy person. I live in a beautiful place. I have food. I have shelter. Like, I have friends. Whatever. Like, I'm okay. And like, there's all this other right. So, it's like just take away that isolation of pretending like you're just fabulous and you're great and you're amazing when you're not. Like,
mhm.
and of course, if the cashier at the grocery store asks me how I'm doing, I'm probably just going to say, I'm fine. Like, I'm not going to dump on her.
Yeah.
Like, there's a time and a place.
Yep. And another thing related to this, I want to say one more thing about it is that I respect so much about you, especially individually. Everything we're talking about, to add to that, is that as a wellness facilitator, right? Because there's a lot of, I think people see things again on social media, whatever it is, or wellness facilitators feel like they have to give this thing like, I have the answers, I live this radiant life, I make X amount of dollars per month. I'm just like, I'm just killing it out
I
here.
know.
I'm
I'm
gonna
like, are
marry.
you?
Yeah, and the thing is like, I think to be human, to be grounded and human as a wellness facilitator is one of the greatest gifts because again, you're holding the space, you're being the anchor for like a held space. There's no doubt about that. The part of being that anchor is being honest that you are also a person. You also go through feelings and experiences, and so I just want to reflect that to say all the more why I appreciate it so much about you. And as we've guided together and become friends and everything like that, something I appreciate about you so much is that you're so grounded in the work that you do for yourself and your own practice, and that absolutely reverberates. Because again, like everybody's got their own journey, their own way of facilitating, their own way of guiding. I respect people who are showing up heart-centered, but I extra appreciate people who are genuinely themselves and just honest and real. And I just think it creates for such a better facilitator and like a more uh, grounded, like genuinely anchored experience, not just like, here's what wellness should feel like, and you're just skating the surface the whole time,
Right,
you know?
right. I totally agreed. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Uh, anything else that you would like to share about the work you're doing, stuff you got going on before we
Yeah, you know what? There's two things I want to share that are
yeah,
really
please.
just fun and exciting to for anyone. So, I am part of something called yoga at sea, like the ocean at sea. I'm just a teacher. It's not my thing. I'm not running it, but I love that I'm just a teacher sometimes. Sometimes I love to just show up and teach, and then I don't have to do anything else, right? So we go on a cruise, we do yoga. And it's fun. And so it's not the whole cruise ship is not yoga. There's like a group of like 30 of us. And then we also visit, and this is like the best part of it to me. We visit the ashram in the Bahamas called Shivananda. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. It's gorgeous. So I do that a couple times a year. We have one coming up in November. It'll be a lot of fun. So I'm doing that. And then in Miami in December, if anyone can get down here, yourself included, I'm part of, have you heard of Art Basel? Like that?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So
Yeah.
during Art Basel, which is like so much fun, but also like good luck getting in a car in the city because you can't like go anywhere. I'm part of something called the Global Sound Bath Experience, and they're trying to make it like the longest sound baths. It's many, many, many sessions over many days. I think it's December 3rd through 7th, all kind of like based around Art Basel type activities. So I'm leading at least one class on December 6th in Wynwood, like the kind of art neighborhood. Um, but it'll be really fun. So if anyone is going to be down during Art Basel, I'll have like links up on my Instagram and all that kind of stuff to join. But they're curating like a really awesome experience. So look it up, Global Sound Bath. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to check my calendar for that because that sounds awesome. And I've never been
Oh my God, you would love it. Again, like buckle up because it is a wild ride, but it's so cool.
That sounds amazing. And
So cool.
what's your Instagram handle?
Bloom Burst Life. So bloom like a flower's blooming, burst like you're bursting with excitement, and then just LIFE. Bloom Burst.
Right.
Mindfulness Unscripted on YouTube and Spotify. JohnOrsini.com for in-person events, Zoom sessions, and more.